I could not move my left side. My tongue felt heavy, like it had forgotten my name. But my mind was clear as glass. In the dark of that hospital room, I heard my son lean close and breathe 5 thin words that split my life in 2. Half alive. Not worth it. He thought I was drifting. He thought I was less than a person. He was wrong. I was awake, and I was listening. I lay there and counted my breaths. I counted years of work, years of love, and all the times I said yes when life told me no. A new kind of calm settled over me. Not rage, not begging. A plan. 6 weeks from this night, a letter will arrive at his door. It will be short, clear, and final. It will end the future he built on my back and on my silence. I am done being quiet. If I can think, I can act, and I will. The morning after my collapse, a calm doctor stood at my bedside and spoke to me like I was whole. He said my scan looked as expected for a stroke. He said my speech and my left side would be slow for a while. Then he said the line I wrapped both hands around. "Your thinking is intact." I nodded. It was a small nod, but it felt like a lighthouse turning on. I was not broken in the place that makes choices. I was still me. When the doctor left, the room changed temperature. My son came in with his careful smile, the one he wears to meetings. His wife walked straight to the chair, set down her bag, and crossed her legs like a clock starting. They asked how I felt, and I tried to answer, but the words bumped into each other. My tongue worked hard and made a soft, messy sound. My son patted the rail and said, "Rest, Mom." Then the talk slid away from me. They spoke in the tone people use for calendars and bills. "If rehab takes months," he said, "I need to tell the firm about staffing." She answered, "We should look at options early. Better to get on a wait list." They said long-term 3 times and practical twice. They did not say love. They did not say we'll be here. It was a meeting about a problem, and the problem was me. I stared at the ceiling tile with the tiny crack in it and thought of every time I had solved a crisis by staying still and thinking first. When he was a baby and the power cut out in winter, I warmed his milk on a candle and sang to keep him calm. When he was in school and the tuition bill came higher than expected, I took a second shift and told him it was for fun money, so he would not carry my worry. That is what mothers do. We keep the world quiet so our children can grow. But now my quiet had given him room to believe I was less than a person. He leaned closer to his wife and said, almost kindly, "She's half alive, and we have to be realistic." The words slid under my skin like a thin, cold blade. Half alive. Not worth it. I had heard those 5 words the night before. Hearing them again, in daylight, told me they were not an accident. They were his position. For a moment, panic tried to climb up my chest. It wanted me to fight, to fling sounds into the air, to prove I was here. But the doctor's sentence steadied me. My thinking is intact. Panic shouts. Strength listens. I let the panic pass and chose something quieter and stronger. I began to take inventory in my head, the way I did for my small office when tax season hit. What do I have? A clear mind, a long memory, a lifetime of receipts for love given. What do I need? Time, a plan, witnesses who see me as a person. What can I control today? My choices. My consent, where my voice will land when it comes back. While they talked about wait lists and costs, I pictured the life I built, brick by careful brick. I remembered the certificate I earned at night school, the clients who trusted me, the refinance papers I signed with a shaking hand so his law school would be paid. I remembered writing big checks with small meals, telling myself it was worth it because he would grow into a good man. That memory hurt like pressing on a bruise, but it also reminded me who I am. I am the woman who makes a plan when the floor tilts. He checked his watch and stood. "We'll come back later," he said. "Don't worry about anything." Then they left me alone with the humming quiet and the doctor's gift, a clear mind. I let the room settle. I let my breath slow. I thought about the difference between love and duty, between care and control. I did not argue with him in my head. I did not rehearse speeches. I built a list. First, I would decide where I recover. Second, I would decide who gets to decide for me. Third, I would write down what I know while it is fresh. So later, no one can make my memory sound like anger. Fourth, I would decide where my life's work goes when I no longer need it. And it would not be to anyone who called me half alive. I felt tired, but it was the good kind of tired, the kind that comes after you finally tell yourself the truth. I did not have my voice yet. I did not have my left hand yet, but I had a spine. I had a plan. And plans, like gardens, grow if you tend them a little each day. The nurse came in and asked if I needed anything. I shook my head and smiled with one corner of my mouth. Inside, I made a promise to myself so simple a child could understand it. No more begging to be seen. No more letting other people name my worth. I would choose calm. I would choose order. I would choose myself. I could not answer out loud, so I answered a different way, by preparing. I was 24 when I brought him home to a one-bedroom apartment that smelled like soap and hope. His crib sat where a dining table should have been. I kept his bottles in a cooler because the fridge froze everything on the back shelf. I worked mornings at the diner and nights wherever someone needed a pair of steady hands. When the sitter quit, I took him with me to fold laundry in a hotel basement, humming so he would sleep through the spin cycle. On good weeks, we had apples and chicken. On thin weeks, we had pancakes and stories. I promised him 2 things. He would feel safe, and he would have a chance. Chance costs money. So I learned numbers the way other people learn a new language. I took community classes, then a certificate, then small clients who paid in checks that bounced as often as they cleared. I smiled anyway and kept records clean. The day a doctor's office asked me to handle their books, I cried in the bathroom where no one could see. We were inching forward. He grew fast and clever. When he said he loved the sound of a piano, I found a teacher who would take half price if I cleaned the studio on Saturdays. When his school sent home a flyer for a science camp, I tucked overtime tips into an envelope until I could say yes. I told him the world was big and he could fit inside it. College came like a mountain. I paid tuition 1 semester at a time, piecing it together with extra shifts and careful living. He graduated without loans. I hugged him so tight he laughed and said I was going to wrinkle his shirt. I didn't care. I had ironed too many shirts in my life to fear one more crease. Law school followed. The number on the paper made my hands cold. I stood in a bank office with a polite man and signed my name on a refinance I didn't want. Not because I loved debt, but because I loved my son. "I'll pay you back, Mom," he said. "Every penny." I told him to build his life and not look back. He smiled in that bright way children do when they believe the road ahead will never bend. He did well. He wore sharp suits that I could never afford when I was his age. He met a woman who spoke quickly and carried herself like she had always lived in rooms with high ceilings. When they got engaged, I offered help for the reception. "You've done enough," he said, but the relief in his eyes told the truth. I wrote the check and told myself it was joy. Maybe it was both. They bought a house with a porch wide enough for summer. The down payment was heavy. I looked at my savings, at my age, at my roof that needed new shingles, and I still chose him. "It's too much," he said, but his voice lifted on 2, and I knew it made everything easier. "Make a home," I told them. "Fill it with good fights and quick apologies. Keep the porch light on." I went back to my smaller place and curled up with a cup of tea and the kind of tired that feels like purpose. At first, gratitude was bright. He called and said thank you and sent photos of paint samples I pretended to understand. Over time, the thank yous got shorter. The asks got neater, like items on a list. Could I cover a surprise fee? Could I float something until a bonus hit? I said yes the way rain says yes to the ground, without thinking, because that is what it knows how to do. Then there were the jokes that were not quite jokes. Mom, you're the family CFO. Mom, you always rescue the budget. I laughed along because laughing is often cheaper than explaining. I told myself he was busy, that success is loud and youth is fast. The first true alarm rang the year I turned 68. I mentioned softly that I was thinking about retiring in 2 years. My knees had started to whisper in the mornings. My eyes got tired before the numbers did. He went quiet in the way of people who are doing math. Are you sure that's wise? He asked, not how do you feel? Not what will make you happy. Just wise, like I was a portfolio to manage. After that, the tilt sharpened. When I bought myself a new winter coat, he said, "Nice one." Expensive? When I gave to a local program that helped seniors with groceries, he said, "You should really preserve capital." The boy I raised to be generous had become a man who audited kindness. Maybe it happened slowly, the way sugar melts in tea. By the time you taste it, you can't see the crystals anymore. I kept a quiet ledger in my heart, not of money, but of tone. The warm calls became check-ins. The check-ins became reminders. I carried the weight like I always had, but now it pulled in the wrong direction. I started to understand that my yes had trained him more than my stories ever did. I loved him. I still do, but love without boundaries turns into something that eats the hand that feeds it. The day I said the word retire, I watched him hear shortage. The day I said I'm tired, I watched him hear available. I called it love. He started calling it supply. I woke to an ordinary morning. The window held a square of pale light. The kettle sighed. I rinsed a cup and reached for the tin of tea like I had 1,000 times. Then the world tipped. A bright pain burst behind my eye. The cup slipped. My left hand did not catch it. My left hand did nothing at all. My mouth tried to call out and made a sound that was not a word. I knew what was happening even as the floor came up to meet me. I was falling out of my life and into a new one. Time turned strange. Part of me floated above the mess of water and broken ceramic. Part of me counted. 1, 2, breathe. Because counting was something I could still do. I told myself a simple sentence inside my head. Stay calm. You are still here. Somehow I reached the little device at my collar and pressed the button. Help was on its way. I lay on the kitchen floor and studied the pattern in the tile to keep my mind from running. The pattern did not change. That steadiness helped. Faces came with quick hands and kind voices. Strangers called me by my name and asked me to squeeze, to lift, to smile. My right side obeyed. My left side ignored the request like a stubborn child. Words gathered behind my teeth and fell apart on the way out. I saw the worry in their eyes, but I also saw respect. They spoke to me like I could understand, because I could. In the hospital, lights moved over me. Machines hummed. People asked the same questions again and again to measure where I was and where I wasn't. A doctor with a tired, gentle face told me what my body already knew. The stroke had touched my speech and my movement. It had not touched my mind. Your thinking is clear, he said. I held those 4 words like a handrail. A nurse showed me how to shape sounds one at a time. We did not aim for pretty. We aimed for possible. I learned to nod when yes was yes and to shake my head when no was no. I learned that a short sentence could be more powerful than a river of panic. Hours slid by. I rested and woke and rested again. I took stock the way I have always done in hard seasons. What is broken? What is working? What can be built on what still works? The answers were simple. My left side would need time. My mouth would need practice. My mind could still make decisions. Decisions are the bones of a life. I felt steadier knowing I still had those bones. My son arrived after lunch. He stood in the doorway with a bouquet he handed to a nurse because his hands were full of his phone and his plans. He kissed my forehead, light as an apology he did not say. He asked the doctor the right questions with the voice he uses at work. How long? What's the timeline? What are our options? He said we in a way that meant he. His eyes kept sliding to the corner of the room where the clock lived. He told me I looked good. He told me I was strong. He told me not to worry. Then he turned to his wife and spoke in a low voice about schedules and coverage and the month ahead. I watched him do math in the air, the kind of math that measures time and money and effort. I knew that math well. I had done it for years to build his life. It sounded different now, like someone counting the cost of an inconvenience. I did not argue. My tongue was clumsy. My jaw ached with the work of one clear word. Instead, I let the doctor's sentence ring through me again. Your thinking is clear. That was the ground I stood on while my legs forgot how to. When my son left to make a few calls, the room felt larger. I closed my eyes and saw the kitchen tile, the broken cup, the light on the counter. I saw my own hand, the one that still worked, and I imagined it writing a list. Not a list of fears, a list of steps. I would choose calm over hurry. I would choose clarity over noise. I would choose my own voice, however slow it came back to me. I had no interest in drama. I had every interest in order. My body was slow, but my decision was fast. That evening, I lay still with my eyes half closed and listened to voices at the foot of my bed. My son spoke in the tone he uses for meetings, smooth and careful. His wife answered with neat phrases like she was lining papers on a desk. They did not lower their voices for me. They did not raise them with love. They spoke over me, not to me. They began with numbers. The house is worth about 400, he said, like he was reading a weather report. Her accounts should cover a few years of care if we manage them right. His wife added, if we move quickly, we can avoid a mess later. It's better to plan while things are stable. Stable meant me in a bed, quiet and easy to organize. Then came the phrases that sound kind until you hear what sits under them. Long-term care, continuity, best practices, be realistic. Each one rolled past me like a cart in the hallway. None of them asked what I wanted. None of them imagined me at my own table, with my own cup, in my own home. They talked about capacity like it was a light switch that might flick off at any moment. They used the words power of attorney and timelines. They said it's not worth the investment about a therapy plan the doctor believed in. The words did not shout. They cut anyway. It is a special kind of loneliness to be living and to hear your life treated like a file to be closed. I watched the shape of my son's back against the window and felt something I did not want to feel. A distance I had not put there. This was the boy I had carried through fevers and bad dreams, the man I had pushed into rooms I never reached myself. Now he measured me like a project with phases and deliverables. He told his wife, we should get her on a list before the better places fill. If she can't manage the house, it's wasted equity. Wasted equity. As if the walls I painted and the porch where he learned to ride a bike were nothing more than numbers in a column. I could have tried to force a sound, to flare and scare them into stopping. But I remembered the doctor's sentence. My thinking is clear. Panic is loud. Clarity is quiet. I let their words pass through me and chose a different response. In my head, I made a plan in simple steps. Not drama, process, the kind of order that leaves a trail. I would decide who speaks for me. I would decide where my work goes when I am gone. I would have my choices written in a way no one could bend. I would gather proof of my understanding and place it where it could be found by people who respect facts more than feelings. If my son trusted papers and signatures and timelines, then papers and signatures and timelines would be the ground I stood on. I did not need to win an argument in a hospital room. I needed to build something that could stand without me. They finished their list and said they would circle back. They patted my hand as if to smooth the bedspread, not to touch me. When the door closed, the room felt honest again. I breathed slowly and felt my own name sit steady in my chest. I was not a problem. I was a person, and people like me do not ask for worth. We act from it. I turned my face toward the small square of night and whispered inside myself, clear as a bell, choose order, not noise. Then I picked the first date in my mind and the first call I would make in the morning. The same system he trusts can protect me better than he thinks. My lawyer came to the hospital the next afternoon. She pulled a chair close and spoke to me slowly, not because she thought I was simple, but because she respected the work my mouth now had to do. I told her in short, careful sentences what I had heard and what I wanted. When my words ran thin, I pointed to a page where I had written the rest in big, plain letters. She read every line without interrupting. "I understand," she said. "We can do this in a way that is clear and kind." That was what I wanted, clear and kind. Not revenge, protection. We started with the will. "Do you still want to leave something to family?" she asked. I shook my head. "Then we'll write a new will," she said, "and we'll include a simple reason in your own voice. No anger, just truth." She read back what I dictated, one short sentence at a time. "I have chosen not to leave my estate to my son because of repeated words and actions that reduced me to a burden and pressed for control of my life while I was recovering. I want my life's work to help people who are treated with respect." We kept it that simple. It was enough. Next, we changed who could speak for me. "Right now," she said, "your son is listed to make medical and financial decisions if you cannot." I felt a cold line run down my back. "We will revoke that," she said, "and name people you trust to act for you, not over you." I chose my lawyer for the papers and my neighbor, a steady woman who has shown up for years, for emergencies. We drafted new documents that said so in clear words. No drama, just new names, new signatures, new dates. Then we looked at the policy I had kept for funeral costs and final needs. "Who is your beneficiary?" she asked. I closed my eyes for a moment and pictured my son's face in the hospital room. "I would like it to go to stroke support," I said, "to help people like me get back their speech and their steps." She nodded. "That's a good use," she said. We filled out the change. It felt like turning a key. Money that had been measured against my usefulness would now be measured against someone else's healing. My lawyer was careful about one more thing, my capacity. "We will need letters," she said, "from your doctor and therapist, stating that your thinking is clear and you understand these choices." I smiled as best I could. "My thinking is clear," I said, the sentence that had become my anchor. She arranged it all, evaluations, signatures, witnesses. She explained each step and waited for my yes before moving on. We set the documents in order, will on top, new powers next, beneficiary change behind them. She read each page aloud so I could hear my decisions in full sentences. I signed with my right hand, slow and steady. The pen felt heavy and good. It felt like a tool, not a weapon. When we were done, the room felt different. Not lighter exactly, truer. I had not punished anyone. I had simply drawn a line where none had been, and then I had written my name along it. My lawyer asked if I wanted to tell my son now. I shook my head. Not yet, I said. I want space to heal. I also want him to receive these choices in the way he delivered his words to me. Calm, direct, and final. She understood. Then we'll choose a date, she said. We'll deliver copies by courier. You pick the day and the time. I looked at the calendar and counted forward. 6 weeks would give me time to grow stronger, to practice my voice, to make tea in my own kitchen again. I chose a Friday morning and a small, exact minute that would be easy to remember. We confirmed everything one last time. New will with a clear reason. Son removed from medical and financial control. Beneficiary changed to stroke support. Capacity letters on file. Calm, not cruel. Order, not noise. My lawyer stood to leave. She touched my shoulder and said, You did this with dignity. I let the words settle. Dignity is something you can feel even when you cannot yet lift your arm. A date is set. 6 weeks from now, the truth arrives at his door. The rehab wing became my small school. Morning to afternoon, I practiced how to be myself again. The first lesson was breath. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Slow enough to feel the ribs move. Then came sound. Single letters that felt like pebbles I had to lift with my tongue. M, P, S. I shaped them until they were round and clear. Some days they rolled smooth. Some days they stuck. I learned patience the way children learn to tie shoes. Loop, pull, try again. Walking practice was a narrow hallway with marks on the floor. Right foot, then left. Heel, then toe. My body tried to hurry and stumbled. I made it slow on purpose. I kept my eyes on the end, not the clock. When my left knee wobbled, I whispered inside, Keep steady. When I reached the chair, I sat with pride, not shame. Progress is not loud. It is a quiet line that moves one beat at a time. Handwriting was the hardest surprise. My hand forgot curves and leaned into jagged lines. I wrote my name on thick paper, large and clumsy, until it learned the slope again. I chose one short sentence to copy each day. I make my own decisions. The first week, the words wandered and bumped each other. The second week, they stood straighter. By the third week, the sentence looked like something I could frame. Every evening, I did a small reflection. 3 lines only, to keep my mind clear and strong. Line 1, what I did today. Line 2, what I learned today. Line 3, what I will do tomorrow. Some nights the list was simple. Walked the hall twice. Learned to slow down. Tomorrow, 3 times. Other nights it was tender. Said 2 clean words. Learned I am kinder to others than to myself. Tomorrow be kind to me. I kept my circle small. I thanked the people who helped me and let them help. I ignored the pull to explain myself to anyone who had already decided what I was worth. My energy was for healing, not for trying to be believed. On good days, I practiced small conversations in my head and then spoke them out loud to the empty room. Good morning. No, thank you. Yes, that's fine. I did not rehearse arguments. I rehearsed boundaries, short, true sentences that stand without decoration. The sentence I returned to most was my mantra. I make my own decisions. It fit in my mouth now. It fit in my chest. Food tasted brighter the first time I fed myself with my left hand. I dropped a spoon and laughed instead of crying. Joy can be a practice, too. I learned to celebrate tiny victories like stamps in a booklet. No one else had to see them for them to count. I noticed my thoughts grow less noisy. The more I did the work, the less I replayed the hospital words that had cut me. They became background, like a radio in another room. My plan was the song I chose to keep. New will, new powers, new beneficiary, a steady path back to my own front door. Sometimes I woke at night and felt fear walk past my bed. I greeted it by name and let it keep walking. Then I put a hand on my chest and said the line that had become my anchor, slowly, like a prayer. I make my own decisions. Breath in, breath out. Sleep returned. After 4 weeks, the therapist asked me a question and I answered in a full sentence without stopping. It was not fancy. It was mine. She smiled. I did too. My voice is returning and I know what I will say. He started coming by without calling. The first time I was sitting up in the rehab chair after my walking drills. He stood in the doorway with that polite smile that used to make me proud. Now it looked like a lid on a pot about to boil. "Mom, I found a great facility," he said before hello. "It's safer than living alone. They have full-time staff, activities, everything you need." "I am not moving," I said, slow and clear. "Be reasonable," he answered. "Home care is wasteful. Facilities are efficient." He talked about packages and tiers, about bundled services and discounts if we signed early. He had printouts. He had a tone. I had a sentence. I make my own decisions. I used it. He sighed, like I had missed a lesson everyone else understood. 2 days later, he came again, mid-afternoon, no warning. "I set up tours," he said. "We'll go this weekend." "No," I said. "I will choose my home. I will choose my help." He glanced at my chart and said, "You can't manage a house. Not after this. We have to think long-term." "I am thinking long-term," I said. "That is why I am careful." He began to speak faster. "Home health is expensive. It drains resources. It doesn't scale." "I am not a project to scale," I said. "I am a person." He looked at his wife, who had come with him this time. She watched me the way you watch a difficult client. "We're trying to protect you," she said. "Protection is not control," I said. "I do not sign things I do not want." The next visit, he brought a folder. He put it on my tray like a gift. "These are standard," he said. "Just sign where I flagged. It gives me power of attorney so I can help with decisions. If something happens, we avoid delays." "Nothing is just sign," I said. "I will not give you that power." "It's temporary," he said quickly. "We can always change it later." "I have already changed it," I said. "I am covered." He blinked, then frowned. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you do not listen," I said. "You plan over me." He tried a softer tone. "Mom, I am under pressure at work. I cannot juggle this and guess what you want. Let me handle it." "I will write what I want," I said. "You do not have to guess. You only have to accept." He pressed his hand flat on the folder. "You're not being realistic. You could fall. You could forget pills. In a facility, you'd be monitored." "In my home, I will be seen," I said. "Monitors do not replace respect." He shook his head. "This is stubborn." "This is clear," I said. On his 4th visit, he tried a new angle. "Think about your legacy," he said. "If you burn through savings on home care, there's nothing left for family." "My savings are for my life," I said. "Not for anyone's expectation," he scoffed. "So that's it? You'll waste it on aides and housekeepers?" "I will spend it on safety and peace," I said. "That is not waste." He placed a pen on the folder and slid it toward me. The tabs shone bright yellow. "Sign here, here, and here," he said. I moved the pen back to him. "No," I said. "We are done for today." He stood up fast. "You don't know what you're doing." "I know exactly what I'm doing," I said. "And I am doing it calmly." He gathered his papers with sharp hands. "You're making this harder than it has to be." "I am making it honest," I said. After he left, I sat with the quiet. I was tired, but it was the clean kind of tired, the kind that follows a line drawn straight. I repeated my sentence in my chest until my breath matched it. I make my own decisions. He brought a folder of plans. I had something stronger. Final decisions. I went home on a clear afternoon that smelled like rain. The first thing I did was sit in my own chair and feel the shape of it remind my body where I belonged. Then I began to set my days in order, the way I've always done when life turns. I chose my care, not the other way around. Mornings, an aide came for 6 hours. Bathing, exercises, light cooking, a quiet presence who understood that help can be gentle. After 2 weeks, I cut it to 4. After another week, I reduced it again. I kept a simple rule. If I can do it slowly, I will do it myself. If I cannot, I will ask without shame. That rule made me feel honest. I built my week like a small fence around peace. Monday and Thursday were therapy. Tuesday was laundry. Wednesday, I watered the plants and wrote letters. Friday, I rested on purpose and put a good film on in the afternoon. I ate at my table, even if the food came from a container. I made tea and carried it with both hands, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Each small choice said, "This is my life." Paper came next. I cleared the dining table and set out 3 neat stacks. In one, my will and the simple note that explains why. In the second, the documents that remove anyone else's hand from my decisions. In the third, the beneficiary change that turns loss into help for people like me. I labeled each folder in big, steady letters. I slipped copies into a cabinet by the door and gave originals to my lawyer to keep safe. I did not hide a single thing from myself. Secrets are heavy. Clarity is light. I aligned my people. My neighbor keeps a spare key and my trust. She has shown up for birthdays, storms, and quiet Sundays when the world felt too large. I told her my plan and watched relief pass over her face. She said, "Good." My lawyer reviewed the dates and checked that every page was complete. My doctor wrote what was true about my mind and my choices. These are not warriors. They are witnesses. They make truth easy to lift. I kept my phone on a simple rule, too. If a call arrived with heat in it, I did not answer. If a message tried to drag me into an argument, I did not climb in. I do not fight where no good can happen. Peace is not falling asleep. It is staying awake and saying no to noise. I chose a delivery date for the documents and circled it on my calendar. 6 weeks from the hospital night felt right. Long enough to get strong. Close enough to stay brave. I scheduled a courier for that morning and wrote the address with a steady hand. I added a small note for myself beneath the circle. "Do this kindly." My son tried twice more to nudge me into his lane. I stayed in mine. I told him I was safe and supported. I told him my decisions were made. I did not explain, defend, or bargain. He called it cold. It was not. It was warm toward the future and neutral toward the past. I do not punish. I protect. Every evening I stood at the window for a few minutes and watched the street. Children rode bikes in crooked lines. A woman walked her dog and waved up at my window the way she always has. The world kept happening. I took comfort in that. My life is not a court case. It is a home. On the night before the delivery, I laid the sealed envelopes on the hall table and went to bed early. I slept well. I had followed my own rules and they held. He thinks he can steer me. He is about to learn otherwise. He arrived on a Sunday afternoon, the kind of day that pretends to be gentle. He did not call first. He walked in with a folder tucked under his arm and a tight, practiced smile. "Good timing," he said, as if we had agreed. "I've put together a plan that will make things simple. It's best for everyone." "Sit," I said. "Say what you came to say." He opened the folder and arranged papers on my coffee table like tiles. "This is a realistic path," he began. "A facility with full care. We sell the house to fund it. We consolidate accounts so I can manage disbursements. We set power of attorney today. It avoids chaos later. You have thought it through," I said. "Now listen to me." He kept talking instead. "There's also your will," he added. "It needs an update. I drafted something efficient. It reduces tax exposure and keeps the estate intact." My estate is not a museum piece, I said. It is the work of my life. He cleared his throat. Mom, I'm trying to prevent problems. You can't do this alone. Let me shoulder it. Sign here, here, and here. I'll handle the rest. No, I said. He blinked. No to what? To all of it, I said. And now I will tell you why. He leaned back, crossed his arms, and tried for patience. Go ahead. I heard you in the hospital, I said, steady and plain. You called me half alive and not worth it. You spoke about my house and my accounts like takeout to be split. You weighed my therapy against your calendar. You planned a future that asked me to be quiet or gone. Color left his face, then returned in a quick wave. I was stressed, he said. People say things they don't mean. You did not only say them, I said. You acted like you meant them. You pushed facilities. You brought papers I never requested. You tried to turn my life into your workload. He opened his mouth. I lifted my hand and continued. Since that night, I made changes. I wrote a new will. It states, in simple words, that my estate will go where people are treated with respect. You are not a beneficiary. He stared at me like I had spoken a language he did not know. You can't be serious. I am serious and calm, I said. I also revoked your power to make decisions for me. You will not manage my medical care. You will not manage my money. Those duties sit with people who see me as a person, not a project. He sat forward, voice sharp. That's reckless. If something happens, there will be delays. You're not thinking about risk. I am thinking about risk, I said. The largest risk is giving control to someone who treats me like a burden. He flipped through his folder with quick, angry hands. We can fix this, he said. We can add me back in. We can redraft. No, I said again. There is one more change. The policy I kept for final costs will not come to you. It now goes to stroke support, to help people learn to walk and speak again. He let out a small laugh, the kind that has no joy in it. You would rather fund strangers than your own family? I would rather fund healing than entitlement, I said. He stood up and began to pace. This is punishment. This is protection, I said. Protection I earned and protection I am allowed to choose. He stopped and pointed at my chair. You are not the same as before. You can't possibly understand every implication. You're being guided by hurt. I am guided by clarity, I said. My doctor and therapists have put in writing that my thinking is clear. I understand each decision I made. If you try to undo them, those letters will answer before I have to. He looked down at his papers and then at me. The room went very quiet. I am your son, he said finally. You don't just cut out your son. I did not cut you out of my life, I said. You stepped away when you measured my worth by my usefulness. I am simply keeping my dignity where your hands cannot reach, he swallowed. You're cruel. I am clear, I said. He says I'm cruel. I say I'm clear. The week after our living room talk, the threats arrived dressed as concern. My son called and said he wanted to clear up mistakes in my paperwork. When I declined, he said his attorney would reach out. The letter came 2 days later. It hinted at a challenge to my will and questioned my capacity. The tone was polite and sharp at the same time, like a knife wrapped in a napkin. I did not argue. I forwarded the letter to my lawyer and made tea. My lawyer answered with what I had built. Dates, signatures, plain language explanations, and professional letters from people who had worked with me since the stroke. The doctor wrote that my thinking was clear, my decisions were understood, and my choices were consistent over time. The therapist confirmed I could communicate needs, weigh options, and hold a plan without confusion. The nurse added notes about our steady conversations and my daily routines. My lawyer included a short statement from my neighbor about my independence at home and the calm way I set boundaries. The reply did not shout. It did not insult. It simply placed each fact where it belonged. When the facts are in order, they speak for themselves. Meanwhile, the whispers started. A cousin called just to check in and slid into questions about whether I had gone too far. An old family friend suggested I wait a year and let emotions cool. A church acquaintance said I should think about legacy and not close doors you may want to reopen. I thanked each person for caring and did not step into the net they tossed, set 2 house rules and followed them. First, no unscheduled visits. Second, all legal talk goes through my lawyer. These rules were doors that stayed on their hinges no matter who pushed. I did not block my son. I simply routed him to the place where truth is kept, the page. He tried new angles. He said I had been influenced. He said others were using me. He said I was punishing family. I repeated the same line each time. These are my decisions. Then I ended the call kindly and early. I did not explain myself after I had already been clear. Repeating your truth to someone who will not hear it does not make it more true. It only makes you tired. A second letter arrived from his attorney, stronger in tone, promising a petition to question my capacity. My lawyer replied with a neat packet and a note that any attempt to misstate my condition would be met with the records already gathered. There was also a short timeline showing when I made each decision, who witnessed it, and how it aligned with my medical progress. Reading it felt like looking at a well-kept garden. Everything in its place. Nothing planted in anger. Only what could grow. Days passed. Then the call I expected came. The challenge would not go forward. There was no basis. It ended the way most bluffs do, quietly. Outside, life kept being itself. Neighbors waved. The mail still came. I kept my appointments. I learned a new exercise that made my left ankle feel trustworthy again. I wrote in my evening lines what I did, what I learned, what I will do tomorrow. None of those lines included convincing anyone to respect me. Respect is not begged for. It is held. Some family kept whispering. They said I had changed. They were right. I had changed from someone who absorbed other people's needs to someone who honored my own. That change looked like peace, which can be hard to recognize if you are used to noise. My son sent one last message. You win. I did not answer. This was not a game. It was my life, arranged with care so that even on hard days it could carry itself. Noise gets quiet when truth is in order. Peace did not arrive like a parade. It came like a good chair, steady, useful, and always there when I needed it. My days found a rhythm I could trust. I woke before the street got loud. I stretched my hands and told my body we were on the same team. Breakfast was simple and warm. I did my exercises and then put the kettle on. I made lists that were shorter than before and more honest. Call clinic. Walk 3 blocks. Water plants. Read 20 pages. I crossed items off with a pen that felt like a friend. Twice a week I went to the therapy center. I greeted people by name. We traded small victories like recipes. One man showed me how he steadied his hip before stairs. I showed him how I paused before a word and then let it land. We clapped for each other. It is a gentle thing to clap for a stranger who understands your work. I kept giving, but in a new direction. Each month I sent a small donation to the Stroke Support Fund. It was not grand. It was regular. Regular is how bridges are built. I wrote a short note with each gift. For the person who needs one more session to believe they can. Those words helped me too. At home, I set new rules that were not punishment. They were respect. I answered the door only when I wanted to. I returned calls when I had energy. I did not explain that I needed rest to people who did not ask how I was. I learned that no can be kind when it protects what is still growing. The people who stayed did not demand a role. My neighbor checked on the porch light when storms rolled through. A woman from the center dropped off soup and left with an empty container and a smile. A friend from church sat with me on Thursdays and told me about her garden. We shared quiet without filling it. That felt like wealth. I kept one sentence near me like a coat I could reach for. I make my own decisions. I used it when a form was confusing, when a bill came with a mistake, when a well-meaning person tried to steer me. I did not shout it. I wore it. Some family called less. Some called more, but only to ask about papers. Blood is real, but it is not the only truth. Respect is also real. Showing up is real. I released the idea that I owed love to people who used it as leverage. Love needs air. It cannot live under someone else's thumb. I surprised myself with joy. A robin nested in the tree by my window. I watched the blue eggs, then the tiny beaks, then the sudden flight. I baked a small cake and ate one slice with tea and froze the rest. I learned a new poem by heart. It took a week. My mouth moved slowly, but the words still found their way. I visited the cemetery one bright morning, not because anyone I love is buried there, but because it is a good place to practice gratitude. I thanked my body for staying with me. I thanked my mind for keeping the lights on. I thanked my younger self for every hard yes that carried us here. When people asked how I was, I said, better because I am quieter. Quiet used to mean small. Now it means solid. My son sent messages now and then. Some were soft. Some were sharp. I wished him well and did not open the door he kept rattling. Boundaries are not walls. They are gates you choose when to swing wide. Strength, I learned, looks like this: a calendar with steady marks, a table with simple food, a phone that does not own you, a plan that does not need applause. Strength looks like choosing your own voice and letting it be enough. I do not wait for apologies. I live my life. The morning came the way I asked it to: quiet, bright at the edges, steady. I made tea and straightened the corner of the envelope on my hall table. The date I had chosen weeks ago felt calm in my chest. I was not eager. I was ready. I sent the courier and did not pace. I watered the plant by the window and folded a towel still warm from the dryer. I let the kettle hum once more and turned it off. When the confirmation arrived, I breathed out the kind of breath you take after finishing a long staircase. Not relief from fear, closure from effort. I had kept my word to myself. Final does not have to mean harsh. It can mean clear. The letter was short because truth can be short. It did not punish. It named what happened and protected what would happen next. I did not tell him what to feel. I did not ask him to agree. I drew a clean line, and I wished him strength on his side of it. This is what the letter said. Dear son, by the time you read this, the decisions about my life and my estate are complete. During my recovery, you spoke of me as half alive and treated my care as a burden to be managed. You pressed for control over my home, my accounts, and my decisions. I heard it all. I believed you meant it because you acted like you meant it. I have chosen a different path. My will does not include you. My medical and financial decisions remain in my hands or with people I trust to see me as a person. The policy I kept for the end of my life now supports stroke recovery for people who need help becoming themselves again. This is not punishment. It is protection. It is dignity. I hope you become the man I once believed you were. Growth is still possible. My boundaries are not invitations to debate. Your mother. I did not wait for a reply. A letter like that is not the start of an argument. It is the end of confusion. My son may call it unfair. He may call it cruel. I call it honest. Honesty is a soft pillow when you have carried a hard story. My day went on. I took my walk to the corner and back. I practiced the harder sounds in my exercises and smiled when my mouth remembered them. I wrote my 3 lines in the evening. What I did. What I learned. What I will do tomorrow. I added a 4th line for the first time in months. What I am grateful for. I wrote a clear mind. A steady plan. A quiet house. A future that fits. People sometimes ask if I miss how things were. I miss what I hoped they were. Hope is not a contract. It is a light. Mine now points forward. I choose who steps into it. If you have carried a story like this, if you have had to choose respect over approval, I'm glad you're here. Tell me, what line did you draw that finally gave you peace? Would you have sent the letter? I read your comments and they help someone braver tomorrow. If this felt true, subscribe. New real stories on Sundays. Share where you're watching from. It reminds me how many rooms we can light together. I do not need apologies to live well. I need clarity, and I have it. The woman he called half alive came back to herself and set her life in order. Sometimes half alive is more than enough to change everything.